You think death is the end? A disappearance, an exit. You die and you're gone. Simple, final, over. But where exactly do you go? Not philosophically, not spiritually, physically. Where does the matter that makes up your body go? Where does the energy that keeps you alive go? Where do you go? Most people never ask this question in physical terms. They talk about souls, afterlife, heaven, oblivion, but those are answers to different questions. I'm asking about the physical you, the atoms, the molecules, the energy, the actual stuff you're made of. What happens to that? Here's the answer you're not going to like. You don't go anywhere, because you were never a thing that could go somewhere in the first place. Let me explain. Right now, your body contains roughly 7 octillion atoms. That's a 7 followed by 27 zeros. More atoms in your body than there are stars in the observable universe. Each one of those atoms is doing something. Moving, vibrating, bonding with other atoms, participating in chemical reactions. Your body is not a static object, it's a process, a continuous flow of matter and energy. And here's the key point. When you die, not a single one of those atoms disappears. Not one. They don't vanish. They don't cease to exist. They just stop being organized in the pattern we call you. Think about a candle. Light it, watch it burn. The flame flickers. It glows. It radiates heat and light. Now blow it out. Where did the flame go? Nowhere. The flame was never a thing. It was a process. A rapid oxidation reaction releasing energy. When you remove the conditions that sustain that process, the process stops. The flame doesn't go anywhere, because it was never anywhere. It was something happening, not something existing. You are like that flame. You are not a thing. You are a process, a pattern of atoms and energy, maintaining itself through constant activity. When that activity stops, when the conditions that sustain the pattern fail, the process ends. You don't go anywhere. You stop happening. But the atoms remain, every single one. Your body is roughly 65% oxygen by mass, 18% carbon, 10% hydrogen, 3% nitrogen. The rest is trace elements. Calcium in your bones, iron in your blood, phosphorus in your DNA, sulfur in your proteins. Tiny amounts of potassium, sodium, chlorine, magnesium. All of it, every atom, came from somewhere else before it became part of you, and all of it will go somewhere else after you die. The oxygen you're made of was fused in the cores of massive stars, billions of years ago. When those stars exhausted their fuel and exploded as supernovae, they scattered oxygen across space. That oxygen eventually condensed into clouds of gas and dust. Some of it became part of Earth. Some of it became part of the water you drink, the air you breathe, the food you eat. And some of it became part of you. The carbon in your cells, the framework of every organic molecule in your body, was also forged in stars. Carbon forms in the cores of red giants through a process called helium fusion. When those stars die, they release that carbon into space. It drifts, it collects, it becomes part of planets, asteroids, comets. Eventually it becomes part of living things. Plants pull carbon dioxide from the air. You eat the plants or eat animals that ate the plants. The carbon becomes you, for a while. The iron in your blood, the atom at the center of every hemoglobin molecule carrying oxygen through your veins, was created in a supernova explosion. Iron is the last element a star can fuse before it collapses. When a massive star runs out of fuel, its core collapses in a fraction of a second. The rebound generates a shockwave that tears the star apart. In that explosion, heavier elements like iron are synthesized and blasted into space. Some of that iron eventually found its way into your body. It's there right now, cycling through your bloodstream, enabling you to breathe. You are made of stardust. Literally. Every atom in your body except hydrogen was manufactured inside a star. You are the universe rearranged into a temporary pattern capable of looking back at itself and asking where it came from. Now let's talk about energy. Your body is an energy processing machine. Every second, trillions of chemical reactions occur inside your cells. These reactions break down glucose and other molecules, extracting energy stored in their chemical bonds. That energy gets transferred to a molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ATP is the universal energy currency of life. Your cells produce and consume roughly your body weight in ATP every single day. Constantly synthesized, constantly used, constantly recycled. Where does this energy come from originally? The sun. Plants capture sunlight through photosynthesis, converting light energy into chemical energy stored in sugars. You eat plants or animals that ate plants. Your body breaks down those molecules, releases the stored energy, and uses it to power everything you do. Thinking, moving, breathing, maintaining body temperature, repairing damage, all of it requires energy. All of it traces back to the sun. Your brain alone consumes roughly 20% of your body's total energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. Every thought you have, every memory you form, every sensation you experience requires energy. Neurons firing, ion channels opening and closing, neurotransmitters being synthesized and released, all energy-intensive processes. Consciousness is expensive, and when you die, that energy doesn't disappear either. It can't. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. That's the first law of thermodynamics. Energy only changes form. The chemical energy in your cells gets converted to heat as your body decomposes. That heat radiates into the environment. The molecules break down. The bonds holding them together release their stored energy. That energy dissipates as thermal motion, spreading out into the surrounding matter. Nothing is lost. Everything transforms. But here's what does stop. The pattern, the organization, the specific arrangement of atoms, and the coordinated flow of energy that maintains the structure we call you. That's what dies. Not the matter, not the energy, the pattern. Think about a whirlpool in a river. Water flows in, water flows out. The whirlpool maintains its shape, but it's not made of the same water from moment to moment. The water is constantly being replaced. What persists is the pattern, the organization, the structure of flow. If the conditions change, if the current slows, or the riverbed shifts, the whirlpool disappears. The water is still there, the river is still there, but the whirlpool, the pattern, is gone. You are a whirlpool. Matter flows through you constantly. You inhale oxygen, you exhale carbon dioxide, you drink water, you urinate, you eat food, you excrete waste, you shed skin cells, you lose hair. Roughly 98% of the atoms in your body are replaced every year. The matter is temporary. The pattern persists. For a while. Think about that for a second. The you that exists today is not made of the same atoms that made up the you from 7 years ago. Almost every atom has been replaced. Your cells have divided, died, been regenerated. Your skin has been completely replaced dozens of times. Your red blood cells live for about 4 months before being recycled. The lining of your stomach is replaced every few days. Even your bones, which seem permanent and solid, are constantly being remodeled. Cells called osteoclasts break down old bone tissue. Cells called osteoblasts build new bone tissue. The skeleton you have today is not the skeleton you had a decade ago. So what are you? If the matter changes, but you persist, what exactly persists? The pattern, the organization, the information encoded in the arrangement of atoms, the structure of connections, the configuration of systems. You are not the atoms. You are what the atoms are doing. And here's the disturbing part. The pattern requires constant energy input to maintain itself. Life is a fight against entropy. The second law of thermodynamics says that isolated systems tend toward disorder. Energy spreads out, structures break down, complexity gives way to simplicity. Living things temporarily resist this by capturing energy from their environment and using it to maintain organization. But this resistance is temporary. It requires fuel, and eventually the fuel runs out. When you die, the mechanisms that maintain order stop functioning. Your heart stops pumping. Blood stops circulating. Oxygen stops reaching your cells. Without oxygen, cellular respiration shuts down. ATP production ceases. Without ATP, the molecular machinery that maintains cellular structures stops working. Entropy takes over. Proteins denature. Membranes rupture. Cells break apart. Tissues decompose. The pattern dissolves. But the atoms don't disappear. They scatter. They return to the environment. They become part of other things. Bacteria and fungi break down your tissues. They metabolize the organic molecules, extracting energy, releasing simpler compounds. Carbon dioxide diffuses into the air. Water evaporates or seeps into soil. Nitrogen returns to the earth. Calcium and phosphorus from your bones slowly dissolve. Everything disperses. And those atoms don't stop there. The carbon that was part of your cells might be absorbed by a plant. That plant might be eaten by an animal. That animal might be eaten by another animal. The atoms cycle through the biosphere, moving from organism to organism, participating in countless forms of life over millions of years. Some of the atoms in your body right now were once part of dinosaurs. Some were part of ancient trees. Some were part of microorganisms that lived in primordial oceans billions of years ago. And after you die, Those atoms will continue. They'll become part of other organisms, other structures, other processes. The atoms that make up your body have been cycling through the earth for billions of years. They existed long before you were born. They'll exist long after you die. You're just borrowing them for a few decades. This should change how you think about yourself. You are not a permanent entity. You are a temporary configuration, a brief eddy in the flow of matter and energy through the universe. The atoms don't belong to you. You don't own them. They pass through you. For a moment they're organized in a pattern complex enough to be aware of itself, to ask questions, to wonder about its own nature. And then the pattern breaks apart and the atoms move on. Let me make this more concrete. Consider the water in your body. You're roughly 60% water by mass. That water is constantly being replaced. You drink. You sweat. You breathe out water vapor. You urinate. The water molecules in your body right now are not the same water molecules that were there yesterday. The average water molecule stays in your body for about 9 to 10 days before being replaced. Now think about where that water comes from. Rain falls, it collects in rivers, lakes, aquifers, you drink it. It becomes part of you temporarily. Then it leaves. It evaporates from your skin. It's exhaled from your lungs. It's excreted in urine. That water returns to the environment. It evaporates. It condenses. It falls as rain again. The water cycle has been operating for billions of years. The water molecules in your body have been part of clouds, oceans, glaciers, other organisms, countless times before. They'll be part of countless other things after you. The same is true for carbon. You breathe out carbon dioxide with every breath. That carbon dioxide gets absorbed by plants. The plants use it to build sugars, starches, cellulose. You eat the plants. The carbon becomes part of you. Then you exhale it again. The carbon cycles. It doesn't stay with you. It moves through you. Nitrogen in your proteins came from the atmosphere originally. Bacteria in soil convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms plants can use. You eat the plants or animals that ate the plants. The nitrogen becomes part of your amino acids, your DNA, your neurotransmitters. When you die, decomposers break down your tissues and release that nitrogen back into the soil. The nitrogen cycle continues. Every element in your body participates in these cycles. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. You are a node in a vast network of flows. Matter flows in. Matter flows out. Energy flows through. The pattern holds for a while. Then it doesn't. Now let's talk about what happens at the cellular level. Your body contains roughly 37 trillion cells. Each cell is itself a staggeringly complex system. Inside each cell, thousands of different proteins perform specific functions. Enzymes catalyze reactions. Structural proteins maintain cell shape. Motor proteins transport materials. Signaling proteins transmit information. All of this requires coordination, regulation, precise timing, and all of it requires energy. Each cell contains structures called mitochondria. These are the power plants of the cell. Mitochondria take in oxygen and organic molecules and produce ATP through a process called cellular respiration. This process is incredibly efficient, but it's not perfect. Some energy is always lost as heat. That's why your body temperature is higher than the surrounding environment. You're constantly radiating heat, a byproduct of the energy transformations keeping you alive. Mitochondria themselves have a fascinating origin. They were once independent bacteria that were engulfed by ancestral cells billions of years ago. Instead of being digested, they formed a symbiotic relationship. The host cell provided protection and nutrients. The mitochondria provided energy. Over time, the relationship became permanent. Mitochondria still retain their own DNA, separate from the DNA in the cell nucleus. They reproduce independently inside cells. You inherited all your mitochondria from your mother because the egg cell contains mitochondria, but the sperm cell's mitochondria are destroyed after fertilization. So you're not even just one organism. You're a collection of organisms working together. Your cells host bacteria in your gut, on your skin, in your mouth. These microorganisms outnumber your own cells. They perform essential functions. Gut bacteria help digest food, synthesize vitamins, regulate immune responses. You couldn't survive without them. You are not a single unified entity. You are an ecosystem. And when you die, that ecosystem collapses. The bacteria that were helpful while you were alive become agents of decomposition. They break down tissues, releasing gases, producing the smells associated with decay. This is not a separate process. It's the same organisms doing what they always did, just without the regulatory systems that kept them in check while you were alive. Death is not an event, it's a process. Different parts of the body die at different rates. Brain cells die within minutes of oxygen deprivation. Skin cells can survive for hours. Some cells can be kept alive in culture for days or weeks after the organism dies. There's no single moment when life switches to death. It's a gradual loss of organization, a progressive failure of systems, a cascade of breakdowns spreading through the body, and as the organization fails, entropy increases, heat dissipates, structures break down, complex molecules are split into simpler ones. The order that characterizes life gives way to the disorder that characterizes equilibrium with the environment. This is inevitable. This is thermodynamics. This is physics. But again, nothing disappears. The atoms are still there. The energy is still there, just in different forms. What's lost is the pattern, the organization, the specific arrangement that made those atoms into you. Now think about information. Your DNA contains roughly 3 billion base pairs. If you printed out the genetic code in your cells using standard font, it would fill thousands of books. Every cell in your body contains a complete copy of this information. The instructions for building and maintaining you are encoded in molecular form, replicated billions of times throughout your body. When you die, that information doesn't vanish instantly. The DNA molecules remain for a while. They degrade slowly as enzymes break them down. But the information encoded in them, the specific sequence of base pairs that made you unique, that information is lost when there's no longer a system capable of reading and executing it. Information requires a substrate and a mechanism for interpretation. When those fail, the information becomes meaningless noise. This is what's truly lost at death. Not the atoms, not the energy, the information, the specific configuration that defined you, the pattern encoded in molecular structures, neural connections, cellular arrangements. That pattern took decades to build. It accumulated information from experiences, encoded memories, developed skills, and when the systems maintaining it fail, it dissolves. You might object. You might say consciousness is more than information. That subjective experience is something beyond physical processes. But every time we've looked, every time we've tested, we've found consciousness correlates perfectly with brain activity. Damage specific brain regions, lose specific capacities, alter brain chemistry, alter consciousness. There's no evidence of consciousness existing independently of physical processes. And when those processes stop, consciousness stops. This is not comforting. You want there to be something more, some essence that persists, some self that continues beyond the dissolution of the body. But physics offers no such consolation. What you are is a temporary pattern of organization. And when that pattern breaks down, you stop, completely, finally. But think about what that means. You are not separate from the rest of the universe. You are made of it, assembled from atoms forged in stars, arranged into structures capable of sustaining themselves for a time, destined to return to the cosmic flow of matter and energy. You are the universe experiencing itself, a localized, temporary increase in complexity and awareness, emerging from the vast impersonal processes that govern everything. Death is not annihilation. It's dispersal. The matter that constitutes you returns to the environment. The energy that animated you dissipates as heat. The pattern that made you unique dissolves. But nothing is lost from the universe's perspective. The atoms continue. The energy continues. Only the organization changes. The carbon that was part of your neurons might become part of a tree. The iron that carried oxygen in your blood might become part of soil, later absorbed by a plant, eaten by an animal, incorporated into new life. The calcium in your bones might dissolve, flow into groundwater, be taken up by roots, become part of new structures. Your atoms will scatter, but they'll continue participating in the ongoing processes of the universe. And those atoms carry no memory of having been you. An atom doesn't know what it's part of. It doesn't care. It follows physical laws. It bonds with other atoms according to electromagnetic forces. It doesn't distinguish between being part of a human, a rock, a cloud, or a star. The atoms are indifferent to the patterns they temporarily form. You don't go anywhere when you die, because you're not a thing that can go somewhere. You're a process. And when the process stops, there's no you left to go anywhere. There's just the matter and energy that temporarily formed the pattern, now free to participate in other patterns, other processes, other forms. That's the physical answer. Not reassuring, not mystical, not transcendent, just true. The atoms that make you will outlast you by billions of years. They'll be part of stars yet to be born, planets yet to form, life yet to evolve. You're a brief configuration in an endless transformation, and when your configuration ends, the transformation continues without you. Reality is not obligated to comfort you. It is only obligated to be consistent, and the physics is clear. Matter and energy are conserved, Patterns are not. You are the pattern. And patterns, no matter how complex, no matter how beautiful, no matter how aware of themselves, are temporary. This is what death is. Not a journey, not a transition, a dissolution, the end of a pattern, the dispersal of organization, the return of borrowed atoms to the universe that made them. You came from stars. You return to dust, and the dust becomes stars again.